So, welcome to the final part of my Dune deep dive. And did fear prevent Paul from preventing the Jihad in his visions? Throughout the first story, Paul is given these visions. And hold on, let me find it. This is the line from the movie. It's not quite word for word from the book, but it gets the point across. It's coming. I see a holy war spreading across the universe like unquenchable fire. A warrior religion waves the Atreides banner waves the Atreides banner in my father's name. Fanatical legions worshipping at the shrine of my father's skull. A war in my name, everyone shouting my name. And that's the vision Paul had, and what he feared most was this Jihad, which would actually go on to kill 60 billion people. The only planet to remain untouched by it would be Paul's home world of Caladan, because his mother would refuse to let anything happen to it. But Paul seen these visions, he feared it, he tried to go around it, and he kind of did abandon the litany against fear here. I must not fear. Fear is the mind killer. Fear is the little death that causes total obliteration. I will face my fear. I will permit it to pass over and through me. And when it has gone past, I will turn the inner eye to see its path. And its path where fear has gone, there will be nothing, only I will remain. Paul never got over this fear of the Jihad, and he kept making choices that locked him into this path, because Paul, as we know, didn't just see visions of the future. He saw visions of possible futures, and he tried to circumvent things like having to kill Stilgar. And although he made points about this practice of the Fremen people, and that, this whole challenging and killing, we're killing our best warriors, it makes us weaker. He's like, do you bash your knife against a rock before a fight? Do you cut your arm off? But in the process, he found a compromise where he would fully embrace that he is the Lisan al-Gaib, the voice from the outer world, and his mother recognized the danger of him making himself this religious figure to the Fremen and not the political leader, which would lead on to disastrous consequences for 60 billion people. Paul, the problem was, and I quote from another one of the books, Muad'Dib could indeed see the future, but not understand the limits of the power. Think of sight, you have eyes, yet you cannot see without light. If you are on the floor of a valley, you cannot see beyond the valley. Just so, Muad'Dib could not always choose to look across the mysterious terrain. Paul could see the potential futures because he was seeing destinations. He wasn't seeing the journey. He couldn't see how his choices would lead to this path or that path, and he made choices that he thought could avoid the Jihad that ultimately caused them. Did he give in to fear? I like to think yes, but it's open for discussion. Dune is, again, it's a very dense, complex story, and there's a lot to discuss. We know from the book Dune Messiah that the galaxy, even Jihad aside, doesn't exactly, in improve under Paul's rule. The people even want constitution, which Paul denies because he doesn't want anything to hinder his authority, which ironically furthers the religious zeal of the Fremen people. He ultimately loses his sight in an assassination attempt, and although he can still act as he can see through prescience, but he's now fully locked into the path of the Jihad. He has to go only by his vision, so he cannot deviate. And again, it was Paul, in ways it was like him looking for the easy way out that leads to the worst case scenario. Paul's ultimate goal was get revenge for his father, get the Harkonnens, take power from the Emperor, and the Fremen were more or less a tool in that path, and it made him this deity figure to them that they would go on to kill 60 billion people in his name. Paul is not the hero of Dune. He is a tragic, highly flawed protagonist who makes a lot of wrong decisions. Like Frank Herbert said, he wrote the book as a warning against charismatic leaders, and we even see how what can be interpreted as good intentions can lead to bad things if people just blindly follow leaders and don't ask questions, which I do believe. I'm not as against leaders as Frank Herbert was, but I do believe leaders do need to be held to a higher standard and kept under closer scrutiny. And this story, it's a good example, a good parable about the dangers of such leaders and following them blindly. Paul's choices led to a worst case scenario, whether it was him afraid of the Jihad and trying to avoid it, or focusing too heavily on the ultimate goal of avenging his father. His intentions, even if some of them were good, led to this path. If there's two things you can take from his story, it's not to blindly follow leaders and not to give in to fear. So that's my take on the Jihad, although I gave my opinion. Like I said, did Paul's fear cause the Jihad? That's left up to interpretation. I know it's kind of a cop-out not giving you a direct answer and just saying, in my opinion, I think so, but it is left up to interpretation, and I'm curious to see what you have to say in the comments. So like, share, comment, subscribe, over and out.